Hi, this is Donna. Welcome to DD Paper Crafts. Today I'm going to show you the basics of making this carousel card, and I've added a few extra pop-out elements. So this is how the card stands. Each panel folds down into itself with a little bit of help because of some of the pop-up elements, and then it ties up on the side with a ribbon. So let me show you the basic carousel card, which probably most of you are aware of, and then how I've added the additional pop-up elements. For the basic card base, you'll need 4 squares of your chosen cardstock. And in my instance, I'm using a square which is 10 inches by 10 inches, which when folded is going to give me a card which is 5 by 5. So think about the size of the images, etc., that you're going to be using. And when you decide how big you want your card base to be, you need the width and the length of your card to be double the size of your card base. So for instance, if you're doing a 4 by 4, you'd have a piece of 8 by 8. If you're doing a 6 by 6, you'd have a piece of 12 by 12. Once you've determined the size of your cardstock, you want to score down the middle. So in my case, 5 inches. Rotate 90 degrees and score at 5 inches. And now we want to create a 1/2 inch glue tab. So I'm going to score in the top left hand corner at 4.5 inches down to the center score line. Fold and burnish your score lines as valley folds. Rotate your cardstock so that your additional tab score line is in the bottom left hand corner, and in the bottom right hand square you want to draw a diagonal from the center point down to the bottom right hand corner. Rotate your cardstock, cut along the additional score line, rotate it back, cut up the center score line, so we're going to be removing this additional cardstock. So now we've cut this section away. Fold and burnish your diagonal, and this wants to be a mountain fold. Make sure everything does sit nice and square. Tuck your glue tab under, flip your piece over, and we want to cut a wedge out along this corner here so that this piece of cardstock doesn't go over the diagonal. So my diagonal runs like so. So I'm just going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut my wedge so that it's inside of that pencil line, and I'm then going to cut a slight wedge from that end. So what you will do is you will add glue to this glue tab here, fold this over, and this is effectively 1/4 of your carousel card. So once that's adhered down, the bottom will fold up like so, and that's one section of your carousel card. So if you do that 4 times, once you've cut your 4 sections, lay them down so you've got your folded edge on the left hand side and your glue tabs at the bottom, and you can either adhere them all together now and then decorate them, or I'm going to decorate each of mine individually. So if you want to decorate them as one unit, this is the front of piece 1. Flip that over, add your glue to here and add it, and then flip over the front of piece 2 and glue those together. Add your glue here. This is the front of piece 3. Adhere that onto there. Add your glue here, and this is the front of piece 4. So once they have all been glued together, that's effectively your carousel card. I haven't glued mine because I want to do something slightly different. And rather than a traditional carousel card where everything is very flat on the surface, I want mine to have an element of pop out, of hanging elements, and also a window where an image can go from one scene into another. So to start with, I'm going to work on each of my elements independently. So I have given some thought as to how I want them to look. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add my background paper to this section here on the back. I'm going to add my background paper to my second section, and then I'm going to cut a window through both sections, which when I glue them together is going to have a hanging image in between the two. I'll crack on and all will become clear as we go along. I've added the paper to the back of my jungle themed section. I'm going to flip it over so I'm working on the back of piece number 1. I've chosen a butterfly die, which is going to be the element which I want to run between the jungle themed section and the woodland section. And I'm just going to roughly mark out how big I want the aperture to be so that the butterfly has got enough room to move around. So roughly there. I've got my cutting mat and craft knife. I'm just going to line up my ruler so I'm working on a square edge, and then I'm just going to cut through cardstock. Okay, so that's cut that away. My butterfly fits in there nicely. I have no idea if this is going to work or not. Then I'm thinking if I take my section 2, because these are the 2 panels which are going to be stuck together, make sure I get the corners lined up. Then I'm going to draw through the aperture that I've just cut, like so, cut that square away, and then theoretically in my jungle piece, which is going to sit like this, is adhered to my woodland piece, which is going to sit like this. I don't know if you can see that. So that would be this is my woodland section and this is my jungle section. I'm thinking that I can have my butterfly on some invisible thread, and it's got enough room in the aperture to fold flat when the cards fold flat, but it's also got enough room to come in between the 2 sections. So this is my woodland scene, and my woodland scene is going to go into a farm scene. So for the transition from my woodland scene into my farm scene, and I'm not going to do this on all of them because I couldn't think of anything where I could get from farm to underwater. So I'm slightly limited, but I'm going to use this image of a leaping rabbit. So this is the aperture for my butterfly, and this is the aperture for my rabbit. Let's just rip that slightly, which is annoying. Make sure your glue is dry before you start cutting away at things. I'm just going to go in with a marker. So now I need to add the background to my farm scene. I will do exactly the same process. So I'll flip my farm scene over. Line up the corners, draw my aperture, and when I've adhered the paper to the inside of here, I'll cut through. So I'm going to get on with that bit, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start completing each of the scenes, and as I add an element to the scene, a pop-up element or a hanging element, I'm going to show you the process that I go through. thought before I get too far down the road I should test my aperture theory just to make sure that it is going to work. I've cut 2 butterflies from Craft Consortium Ink Drops Vivid, and I've added with my hot glue gun a strip of clear thread. I'm going to just dab some quick grab glue into this butterfly, adhere this into place. The thread is probably thicker than I would have liked, but it's what I had in my stash, and I was too impatient to wait for Amazon to deliver some more. So I've glued down my base because with the elements I'm going to be making now, the pop-up elements, etc., I want to make sure each time that the card folds properly. I'll lay it like this, you should be able to see. Lay that down in the aperture. I'm going to take some red liner tape, sit that in the middle of the aperture, gently burnish that down. Put that on there, take off the backing of the top, and take off this one as well. Lay my butterfly in the gap, just push that down, line it up this side, and oh yes, you can see that my butterfly is in the jungle side, and it's also in the woodland side. Possibly could have gone with the bigger butterfly, and when the card does fold up, this is going to tuck flat in against the aperture and is going to be perfectly safe like that. All I'm going to do now is I'm just going to cut some more red tape, and I'm just going to lay it over these pieces to make sure that the thread is fully enclosed. I'm now going to create my hanging element, and I've cut a strip of, this is 180 GSM, and this is 1/2 inch by 10 inches, and I've scored at 2.5, 5 and 7.5. Just going to fold these score lines back, and I'm going to adhere it so that it's stuck inside like so. So I'm going to cover this piece, these 2 outers in the same DSP, and this piece and this piece in the DSP, and then I'm going to get that stuck in. As you can see, I've added my chimpanzee to my hanging section, and I've just used some of the clear thread, and then I've just added that onto the back with red liner tape, and I possibly might add another strip of the green leaf paper inside to adhere that, I'm not sure yet. For the mechanism here that the cat is sitting on, I wanted to be able to shut the card and for the cat to fold back against the side of the card, because by the time I've got all my elements in, I don't want to make this too bulky that it won't actually glue together properly. So all I've done for that, really simple mechanism, I worked out the best length for the body of the cat, which is 1.5 inches, and also worked out the height of the pop-up mechanism that I wanted, which was 1/4 inch. So I've basically got a strip which is 1.5 inches long, and I've scored every 1/4 inch, so 1/4, 1/2, 3/4, 1, and then I've cut it at 1 1/4. And I'm just going to glue this into a tube, and I shall probably use this method for the majority of any of the pop-up elements that I use. So I just glued that into a tube. One side of the tube is going to adhere to the back of the card, and then the element, in this case the cat, was adhered to the front. and then what happens is as the card closes, this is fixed at the back, but as the card closes, this allowed the bottom section to come up. Here is where the cat would be adhered, and that folds flat against the back of the card. So on this particular one, I've got my through the window butterfly, I've got my hanging chimpanzee, and I've got my pop-out cat. I'll carry on with this and the remainder of my sections, and if I come up with anything new as I'm moving through the sections, I'll add them into the video. The only additional mechanism I've used throughout the cards is some of the elements here. I've adhered them onto acetate, and then I've cut a slot through the base and then secured them on the underneath. So these will fold down and in as the card shuts, and then they will almost stand up themselves when the card opens again. So I've now completed my 4 elements. So I'm now going to glue my panels together. In particular, I want to make sure I get my windows lined up. So I'm going to fold those 2 up and just push them together. Make sure they sit neatly. And it's really worth taking the time with this portion and making sure that you get all your elements lined up. Now add the next one. I'm now going to add in the last one, and I'm only adding in this left hand corner because this is where the opening for the book is going to be. So I'm only going to add glue to this side, slot that into there. Then I'm going to close the book up, close up all of the sections like so. So that's going to close like that, and I'm just going to let that sit. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some bulldog clips around the spine here. So that's going to help that stick together. So now the card's stuck together and that's nearly dry. You can see I've added DSP to the front, and I've added a strip of ribbon in between the DSP and the card front. So we've got our jungle scene, which has got our hanging elements, our pop-out cat here, and our butterfly, which runs between the 2 scenes. We've got our woodland scene, which I may add some more elements to if I come across some in my stash. And this has got the rabbit, which runs between the 2 scenes, and the squirrel sitting on the perch, and then the hedgehog, which goes through the floor. We've got the farmyard, which has got the elements which go through the floor. The cow is on a pop-up element. And then finally, we've got the underwater scene with the dolphin and the pop-up crab. I have done what I would normally not do, and that is that I've mixed stamped coloured images with ephemera, but I've thoroughly enjoyed this project because it's meant that I've gone all the way through my stash and picked out anything that I felt was relevant. So there we have the finished project. That then all folds round, the insides go up. Some of them might need a little bit of assistance. You can see that it folds down. So there is an element of bulk to it, but nothing too bad. I'm really pleased with how it's turned out, and I think just for a child to look at and to learn the names of some of the animals, I think it's really fun. So I hope you've enjoyed today's project and the twist on a normal carousel card. If you have and you haven't done already, please consider subscribing to the channel and hit the notification bell for future videos. Until next time, thanks for watching.